Please stand. My brothers and sisters, our good news has been recorded for us by Mark. On that day, as evening drew on, Jesus said to his disciples, "Let us cross to the other side." Leaving the crowd, they took Jesus with them in the boat just as he was. Other boats were with him. A violent squall came up and waves were breaking over the boat, so it was really already filling with water. Jesus was in the stern, asleep on a cushion. They woke him and they said to him, "Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing?" Jesus woke up, rebuked the wind, said to the sea, "Quiet, be still." The wind ceased, and there was great calm. Then he asked them, "Why are you terrified? Do you not yet have faith?" They were filled with great awe and said to one another, "Who is this, that even the wind and the sea obey him?" The gospel of Christ. Praise be to you, O Christ. Please be seated. So I don't know, is it just me, but I mean, is there ever going to be 36 hours in a row that we're not going to have rain? Just 36, right? I mean, in the Northeast, any of you watching from the rest of the world, but here in the Northeast, we have not gotten past 36 hours. This weekend here in the Northeast was supposed to be stunning, right? Yesterday was the beginning of what was supposed to be a beautiful weekend. And then this morning we wake up and we decide we're going to come over on the boat. We bring the boat over and all of a sudden it starts to rain. And we're saying to ourselves, really? Like, come on, But, these storms, do sort of come up, and there are situations with, temperatures and when it gets too hot and winds and everything else, that these things develop and happen. This gospel passage is incredibly popular and really one that's awesome to preach about because there's just so much great stuff in here. You can talk about how, people are in the boat and then there's a storm, right? And there is, sermon after sermon I have taught and preached about how, in the boats of our lives being rocked on the waves of all the issues and situations and circumstances that batter us, that we forget, just like the disciples did, that there's actually Jesus in the boat with us, that we're not there by ourselves, that there's an accompaniment, right? There's the other part where we, like the disciples, we get totally freaked out because we're paying attention to everything that's happening around us, and we ourselves become really terrified by what we see, and we forget that we have to keep our eyes on Jesus. And I've talked about this time and time again, that you cannot be anxious and in Jesus's presence at the same time. We have to have a focus on one or the other. Something controls how we feel and how we react, and we need to do that. And this is a great gospel for that. You could talk about the winds and the waves and the seas, and we could talk about how it relates to health issues and financial crises and relational crises and situations in our life. And we could talk about how all of those batter the boat. And here we are in this boat. There's just so much great stuff. The one I love to preach about, one of my favorites, is the fact that in the midst of this amazing storm that really has all of the disciples a lot terrified, Jesus is out like a light in the stern of the boat. He is just sleeping through it. He's not even paying attention, and so much so that the disciples have to go and say, "Excuse me, we're dying. Don't you think you want to step in and do something?" Because this man, Jesus, has already shown his incredible power and authority over demons and over sickness and illness. And so, what are you going to do? And then, of course, there is the salvation part of the story, which is very popular as well. That the fact that Jesus, all he has to do is stand up and speak a word. He's asked, the disciples intercede, they push him, he sees that they are terrified, he doesn't yell at them first, he takes care of the storm first, But then, gently in the end, turns to him and says, where is your faith? All of those would be amazing sermons today. I'm not preaching about any of that. I want us to talk about why these men, half of which are fishermen, why these men got into the boat in the first place. See, as fishermen, they know the seas. They know humidity, temperature. They're able to look at the clouds. They're able to see nature. And they're able to clearly identify that something's going to happen. They can tell whether or not there's a storm coming or not. And Jesus says, at night, let's get into the boat and let's go to the other side. And you could imagine the conversation. Now, you got Matthew, a tax collector, who knows nothing about boating, knows nothing about getting into a boat, knows nothing about seas, nothing at all. You got Judas, who's really, a scholar for all practical purposes, has no knowledge, no background, and yet in the midst of all that, you could imagine the other fishermen sort of saying, this is not a good time to go. Maybe we should just sort of hang out here for a while and just wait. And also, let's remember that other stories in the gospel, whenever they have crossed the sea to get to the other side, it was never a good experience. They pass over, they end up in Gennesaret, and the man with demons, attacks them, and Jesus has to cast them out and put the demons into the pig, and the pigs run off and fall into the sea. Right? I mean, these people have had these experiences of getting into the boat, and here we have Jesus saying, let us get into the boat to go to the other side, and that's what I would like us to focus on a little bit today. It is very easy in our lives to be very comfortable on one side of the lake, on one side of the ocean, on our shores. We don't like change. We don't like being pushed. We don't like the challenge of having to move outside of our comfort zone to do something and to travel someplace that we have no idea what's on the other side and what's waiting for us. The very fact of the journey, the very fact that the boat is the vehicle for the journey, causes the disciples anxiety, and I think in our lives the same. We have very dear friends. We've decided that we're going to Italy in Christmas, but the point of the matter is, this gentleman, 3 years we've talked to him now, it has taken us 3 years to negotiate with him that the only way to get to Italy is by a plane, because there is no other way of making this journey. And his anxiety and his fears are so great about flying that we have spent 3 years conversing about what kind of drugs he will be on to be on this plane to get to the other side, because of the terror that he has, even though he is dying to get out of here and to go back. He's Italian by descent, so is his wife. They are dying to go to Italy to see and experience things one has not seen ever, the other he saw as a boy. They're dying. They want to get to Italy to see and experience all of that. They can't wait. But they just don't want to have to take the plane. And of course, it took 3 years of dinners and conversations and sort of laying it out, going, look, if we're going, there's no other way. You got to get in a plane. Took 3 years to get him convinced to go to the other side and to get into a plane. And we feel, now is going to be a good time. Don and I are going with them because he has asked me to hold his hand for the 8-hour flight, from JFK, to Rome. But sometimes in our own lives, we get very stuck. We like being where we are, and we are terrified. We are terrified of getting and stepping into the boat. And I think for us, this is a prime example. In our life's journey, we never know where it takes us. Jobs transition, things happen, family members come and go, friends come and go, careers change, we find ourselves in different places, in different situations, different opportunities. And at the same time as all of that change takes place, as much as we might be happy about it, we're also greatly disturbed about it. What caused the disciples, even the fishermen who probably knew that there was a storm brewing, what was it that caused them to get into the boat in the first place? Was because Jesus was getting into the boat with them. And very often you and I think that these journeys in our life are lonely and alone, and we ourselves are on these journeys by ourselves. And even when we're on the boat and we get in the boat, it doesn't necessarily we agree that the boat should leave shore in any way, shape, or form. And sometimes by our actions and by our thoughts and by our past habits, by our lifestyles, we allow ourselves, even then, even with Jesus with us in the boat, not to allow the boat to leave the shore. Even though Jesus knows that the path and the journey from one shore to the other will reveal him all the more to his disciples as being the Son of God that he is, and that together they will arrive safely on the other side. But very often you and I, we get stuck and we get comfortable, and perhaps because past journeys have not gone so well, we don't want to take another journey. We don't want to go anywhere else. We're happy just staying here. And yet at the same time, notice, Jesus isn't asking them, he's not requesting for them to come along for the ride. It's not an option. It's a demand. Get into the boat. Get into the boat and let us go to the other side. They don't know what that means. They don't know what it looks like. They're not terribly sure what will happen along the way. They don't know what's waiting for them on the other side. But Jesus' point is, you are getting into the boat, and oh, by the way, I am in the boat with you. And did you notice? It's a really quick sentence in Mark's gospel. There are other boats with them. There are other people who see that Jesus is leading his disciples across the waters, and because Jesus is going, they also get into their own boats out of their own free will to follow Jesus no matter where he goes. And for you and I think that is exactly where we need to. The rest might happen. We might end up in a storm. We might end up with difficulties. We might end up feeling that we're all alone, or that Jesus is truly asleep and he should pop up and do something about the situation and circumstances I'm in. But the point of the matter is that from the very invitation to get into the boat to when they reach the other side, Jesus is consistently there. What is the problem? The problem is, where exactly are the disciples looking? What do they see? What are they looking for? What are they focusing on? And most of the time, you and I, our challenge, our problem is that we focus on the wrong things. We forget who it is that is asking us to get into the boat. We forget who's in the boat with us along the trip. We forget who's going to be with us when we reach the other side, and we don't even know. We don't even know what that experience is, but we do know without doubt that we are not alone. And this terrible storm, and mind you, these are fishermen. They've been doing this a real long time. They have been controlling themselves. They know exactly how to work. For a fisherman to be terrified about this storm means that all of their skill, everything that they possibly can do, has been utilized and useless. And that's when they end up noticing, oh, by the way, look who's asleep in the stern of the boat. And he wakes them. Why are we so terrified of moving from one place to another? Why are we afraid of what happens next? Why are we anxious about our finances? Why are we anxious about our relationships? Why are we anxious about our health? Why do all of these things disturb us so if we know and believe that Jesus is the one who is with us on the journey? This boat, he sleeps with us in this boat. And ultimately, in the end, when things get tough, and they may, it is Jesus we cry out to, and it is this Jesus that has authority over it all. Why do we not hold on to what it is that we have been taught, what we see as examples of Jesus' relationship with the disciples? And also, these are great stories. Why? Because none of the gospel writers are trying to cover it up. These are ordinary men. These are ordinary people. And they know the reality of the world that they live in. And they know how dangerous storms can be. And they know their life, very life, is being threatened. And I like that. I like the fact that they're not piously just sitting there praying or, discussing among themselves, God's wonders. No, they are anxious, they are afraid, they are terrified, and in their anger and frustration, they're crying out to Jesus because they're annoyed that even though he's there, he doesn't seem to be doing anything. Does that sound familiar to us at all? And I think it's because it's us. It's humanity. It's how we are. And notice that when Jesus is stirred, his first reaction is not to yell at them and say, "What's the matter with you? Where have you been? Have you not listened? Have you not seen? Have you not heard these things? Why are you doubting? No matter how difficult this storm may get, none of it is greater than I." None of it. And I think Jesus addresses the storm first. And then I think in the most gentle voice, he says to his terrified disciples, Where's your faith? Why aren't you applying everything you have seen and heard? Why haven't you applied any of that to this current situation? Why do you look past that and think that that is all greater than I? Donna and I, we had to stop into a nursing home to visit a friend of ours. And no disrespect to the nursing home, nursing homes can be rather disturbing. You walk into a nursing home and the foyer is very pretty. They have a coffee shop, very nice, with chandeliers hanging from the ceiling, very pretty, very nice. But then once you cut off to the sides and start walking down the hallways, you realize that in a 10 by 10 room, they have two individuals laying in beds, separated by a curtain. And as you walk down, I was absolutely aware that most of these people did not have any visitors. There was no one there, and they were all by themselves. And I found myself I found myself calling upon Jesus to let these people know that he is there, because you could see in their face how they have lost all hope, all meaning and purpose in their life. They are overwhelmed by the health issues and the health situations that have really left them immobile, laying in beds. There is that scent in nursing homes that just, my grandmother was in a nursing home when I was a kid, and I'll always remember that scent. And when we walked down the aisle to go down to the gentleman's room that we were visiting, that scent came back. And I remember thinking, these people are in the worst precarious situation of their lives. I believe the disciples cried out to Jesus to help them in that situation, not only because they were terrified, but I think they were also crying out because their group, the community that they had become, was also at risk. When we woke up this morning and we heard all this stuff about Iran, the first thing that goes through my heart is fear, terror, right? What happens next? What does this look like? I have a teenage son. What happens with all of this? Where does it go from here? What happens? And yet I found myself settling myself down and remembering that Jesus is on this boat as well. He has invited us to step aboard with him in faith. And no matter how difficult it gets, no matter how challenging, and no matter how terrified we all get from what we experience and what we see and from what we hear, we cannot forget that it is Jesus, the Son of the ever-living God, who is with us in this boat of our journey together. God bless you.